So, you want to learn all about World War I in 5 minutes, so here we go. In 1914, things were about to get bad. A few powerful imperial empires were all jostling for power, and everyone was itching to go to war to become more powerful or just settle old scores. Plus, there hadn't been a major war in Europe in almost 100 years, so everyone forgot what war was really like, and new technology would make fighting very, very different. But funnily enough, the war doesn't start between two of these empires. Instead, it starts in Sarajevo, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Many Serbians here wanted to be with their own country, part of a trend in Europe called nationalism, and to get their own country, this guy shot the heir to the throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Austria was mad and wanted to go to war, so they got ready to invade Serbia, and Austria had an ally to make things easier, the German Empire, arguably the strongest military force in the world. But there was a problem. Serbia had an alliance with Europe's largest empire, Russia, who would defend them if they ever got invaded. Plus, Russia was allied with France, and France really didn't like Germany since they had taken a part of France 40 years earlier. As you can see, this one regional problem quickly became a continental one, but it gets worse. Germany had a plan and decided to surprise France and invade through Belgium and knock them out of the war fast so they could just focus on Russia. But by invading Belgium, the Germans ticked off England, who joined the war with France. The German attack stalled, Russia got ready to fight, Austria couldn't beat Serbia somehow, and another empire, the Ottomans, joined the Central Powers on the side of Germany and Austria. Italy, who was supposed to be a central ally, joined the Entente. Fighting during World War I was horrific. The countries hadn't changed their tactics since the days of lining up with bright uniforms and using muzzleloaders, so carnage ensued with the use of machine guns, long-range artillery, airplanes, gas, battleships, and later tanks. To not die, the armies began to employ trench warfare, where the two armies would dig in a few hundred yards from each other, defending themselves with machine guns and barbed wire. The front lines didn't change much, but to try and make a difference, the soldiers would try to soften up the enemies with artillery and then charge with thousands of men across this open no man's land, hoping to get enough men into the enemy trench to take it. As you can imagine, this often didn't work and got many people killed, and it exemplified the fighting of most of the key battles of the war. On the Eastern Front, Russia and Germany clashed at the Battle of Tannenberg, encircling and killing much of the Russian army, taking almost 100,000 men out of the fight. At the Battle of the Marne on the Western Front the next month, Germans almost got to Paris, but a Herculean effort by the Entente pushed them back after 6 days, keeping France in the war. Amazingly, the two sides came together for Christmas across the Western Front in an unofficial truce, but the higher-ups made the men resume fighting quickly. At Ypres in Belgium, 3 major battles would be fought, with the first use of chemical gas being used at the second battle in 1915. From 1915 to 17, the Italians fought 12 battles against Austria on the Isonzo River, but to no avail. To try and knock out the weakest of the Entente and resupply Russia, England attacked the Ottomans at Gallipoli, suffering trench warfare on steep cliffs, but they weren't able to make headway and abandoned the effort almost a year later after over 100,000 people died, including many Australians. To bleed the French in 1916, the Germans launched a massive effort at Verdun and did little land-wise, but killed over 300,000 people in 10 months. At this battle, the Red Baron, a German ace fighter pilot, got his start, and throughout the war he would shoot down a record 80 planes. At the same time, the Entente launched a major offensive on the Somme River for 5 months, the bloodiest battle of the war. During this time, the British used the first tanks in history, and the combined losses of the battle was 300,000 dead. A common trend for the war was that many battles had high casualties and no real winners. Starting in 1916, the British sent Lawrence of Arabia to help the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire in a stunning use of guerrilla warfare. In 1917, the conditions in Russia were so bad that the Tsar abdicated, and later that year, Lenin came to power, taking Russia out of the war. Many other related events happened at this time as well within the empires, such as the Armenian Genocide, the Palestinian forced famine, and the Irish Easter Uprising. Keep in mind, this whole time there is fighting everywhere, hence the term World War. Along the West and Eastern fronts, but also in the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and even the Atlantic Ocean, which would bring in one more powerful nation, the United States. While America wasn't in the war yet, it was supplying the Entente with supplies. To stop this, the Germans used another technology, submarines, to sink American ships. This happened many times, and Germany even tried to get Mexico to join the war. Eventually, America had enough and declared war in 1917, joining the Entente. In 1918, everyone was getting tired of war, and people were going hungry at home. To try and sue for peace, Germany launched more offensives on France, which almost succeeded if it weren't for the Americans. On November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m., Germany surrendered, ending the war despite never fighting any battles in Germany itself. About 16 million people had died, and the effects changed Europe forever. The Russian, German, Ottoman, and Austrian empires collapsed, leading to new countries. Communism rose in Russia with a brutal civil war, and Germany was made to take the blame for the war at the Treaty of Versailles, which paved the way for a vengeful leader to come to power 20 years later. Allies tried to form the League of Nations to try and prevent war in the future, but the US didn't even join, and it had no power. All of this would lead to World War II just 21 years later.